So this is Muffin, and Muffin and I are resting together, taking a break from preparing for the 2024-2025 school year. And we were talking about how last year was different from the one before, and he's not old enough to remember the one before that, but I am. And actually the one before that, and the one before that. But he has opinions, of course. He's very opinionated as a cat. And we were thinking about how when these schools, the Agile Learning Centers, started, people were very excited about coding and new technology, and they were excited about Agile because it meant maybe for the adults different ways of working and more agency and more chance to innovate, potentially more effective Agile collaboration. And that was really exciting. And that was 2013. And people talked about how computers had been changing the job landscape and were going to continue to. And they talked about what kind of education kids would need for the jobs of the future. That was all very exciting. And some people talked about just wanting to, not really being sure about any of that, but being sure that their kids had a sense, like we're on the path to finding their personal callings in life, and they wanted space and time to dedicate to, supporting their kids on those journeys. And some people were excited about our spaces, about our Agile Learning Centers, just because it seemed like we were doing things differently as an organization. Like, there were people who came in the early days who didn't have any interest or background in working with kids. Yeah, and now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of like unusual. That's like Ryan and Thomas and Nancy and I all did. But people came because they saw the potential in working with kids, but their experience or their interest had been in group dynamics and coordinating teams and, decentralized decision making, co-design, although that wasn't the trendy name for it. And all those people came and made a thing, and made a really cool thing, and continue to. Although some of them have gone on and they make other things, and that's also cool. You stay in community long enough, or you hold a community long enough, right? And you see lots of different phases of people's life cycles and projects' life cycles and all that good stuff. The hard and the beautiful. But part of what Muffin and I were talking about is how we don't really talk about technology jobs as the future and how every kid has to learn to code. Like, that's just not what people say anymore in our spheres. We could talk about why it was trendy the way it was when it was, and discuss the merits and dangers in it. But what's more interesting for us right now as we get ready for this new school year, isn't he cute? Is that we're hearing about young people's anxiety and about their inability to make decisions because they get so afraid and unsure of themselves, and unsure that if they're right, they can handle the increase in responsibilities and attention. And if they're wrong, like that they'll still be loved and have more chances to keep learning and trying. And we're hearing this like talked about with kids a lot, but it's definitely also a thing with the adults. And with those, college age folks where we're like, are they adults? Are they kids? It depends on our conversation today. And we're hearing a lot about a crisis of loneliness and about people feeling disconnected and really wanting, relationship and belonging, and starting to recognize, for some folks have known for a long time and are very practiced, of course, but on a wider scale, folks starting to recognize how necessary we are, and our good relationships are, our weight-bearing relationships are, for our life satisfaction, our medical health markers too. And so we're talking about, hearing conversations about, the design of our spaces, material and temporal and digital, and where do we have power? How do we get back in the practice of getting in relationship, being vulnerable, meeting strangers, maintaining a friendship, sticking it out personally through the first awkward 7 minutes where someone's new, and then also figuring out how to navigate and bridge those moments in relationship where you've been doing it for, we've been doing friendship for a decade and we're different people than we were at the start, and we still want to walk together. But it takes, some willingness to tolerate discomfort and have hard conversations and work to bridge, our worlds, because we all have complex worlds. And there's really cool experiments happening with all this stuff right now. I don't know, I nerd out about this online. And I'm going to do so more loudly this year, because I think that's what's needed. But for Muffin and I, thinking about starting school, it's interesting that we haven't really led in describing Agile Learning Centers with the way these are places for young people to work on building their self-possession and their confidence. There's a whole, I would love to go off about resilience and like the direction of impact being as important as the force of impact, and we'll get someone smarter than me maybe to explain that in more physics terms. But yeah, like all of the things that the pop psychology books and the teacher TikToks and the parenting Instagram people, like what they're talking about in terms of young people's kind of anxiety and alienation. And some of it's just old people projecting. It's like we don't want to talk about our own alienation, or we don't know how to begin that conversation. So it's easier to talk about how we're afraid for our adolescents who, are in serious danger from mental health crises, especially if they feel isolated or like they can't ask for help, or if they really, are in a place where the situation is such that they can't ask for help. But there is some truth to these concerns, And his chin is so soft, it's very distracting. It's kind of cool that our schools are spaces for people to practice presence with each other and with themselves, and to practice relationship with each other and with themselves, and to experiment and to see where that takes them, and to do it over and over and over again, hopefully for a long enough period of time that they learn what it feels like and they learn that they can. And then, there's lots of moments in life where we go to do a thing and still feel anxious or really worried that we're alone. And maybe sometimes it's true. And we need help to get out of that stuckness. But sometimes what we need to do is be like, oh yeah, I've been anxious before and done the thing. And here's how it went. And here's what I learned. And now I'll try it again and I'll learn something else. Or like I felt very lonely before. But then, Muffin wandered onto campus here and got adopted by a whole very large, loud family. Chosen family of folks. Oh, thanks, okay. Sorry, I won't tell your story without your permission again. But yeah, these are spaces where we really get to practice those ways of being that are slower and embodied, kind of the opposite of the move fast and break things kind of ethos that some of our early influencers started with. But these are really, these are important conversations for our times and important topics, and so important skills to practice together. And I'm really excited this coming school year to hold a dedicated space for still learning to code and play video games and play with, laser engravers and 3D printers and all the other cool stuff. But mostly to do more of this, being together, but with more of our folks, and through a bunch of seasons, and hopefully get more wise and practiced and steady through that experience. So yeah, school starts Monday. Let's say goodbye.